Welcome to the Aquarian Shaman broadcast. I'm Star Wolf, your shamanic host, and I'm here to teach you how to transform yourself and transform the world. Twice a month, we'll be exploring how to develop shamanic psycho-spiritual practices to support transformation while expanding your energy field in a way that can also support others. Each episode offers dynamic experiential guidance and teachings on how to safely enter a natural altered state of consciousness using the sacred breath. Additionally, we will discuss the importance of integration and grounding this medicine into your everyday life. Stay tuned. We're about to create authentic, embodied change that will surely grow corn for the future generations. Okay, welcome everybody. I want to start off with smudging like I always do, and what smudging is, in case this is your first time being smudged. It can be different herbs, but I like to use, most of the time I use sage, but sometimes other things. But I have a little bit of sage in this beautiful shell, abalone shell. And I don't have it on fully blazing because I don't want the fire extinguisher to go off or alarm. So that has happened, not to me, but to some of my allies who have been in conferences where they were smudging and the smoke was going and it started pouring down all the water on all the participants in the audience. So I'm not going to do that. But I am lighting some sage, which is a sacred herb for purification, many, many things. But one of the things it does is it clears the air. And part of what we do when we share is we clear the air. So in many of our events, we start out with smudging. And this signals our brain, our hearts, and also our eyes, because we can see the visible going into the invisible. And it gives us the opportunity to know that we're entering into sacred space. In my very first episode, way back earlier in the year, I called in the directions and spent the whole session doing that and going over all the directions. So if you are new to this, you might want to go back and find that on Transformation Network Radio with Aquarian Shaman and watch that segment. But right now, we'll just call in the east and the south and the west and the north, and all the elements that go with that, the water, the earth, the fire, the air, and the great above, great star nations, all the celestial beings, the invisible world. And we call in the great below from our precious Mother Earth, Gaia. Also the energies of the green man that protect this earth, our home for a while. And also we come back to, light a little bit more, the great within. And this is that spark that surrounds us and that permeates us and that enlivens us and gives us life and consciousness and connection to the divine. My Wolf Clan grandmother teacher, Grandmother Twyla Nitch, called it the within, the within, the within. Go as deep as you can, she said. And then gently and slowly come back, feeling yourself held by all the elements, by all the directions. East, south, west, north, above, below, and ultimately that interconnection we have with our own spirits, souls, and bodies, and with all of creation. I want to begin by welcoming Judy Redhawk on today, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her in a moment. I honestly could sit here and talk honestly about her, just her. I could just talk about her to you for well over an hour. We've had so much time and experiences together of all kinds, and I love her very much and appreciate her in my life, not only as a colleague, and a soulmate, but a dear, dear sister and friend on this path. I want to begin by showing you that she's in the Aquarian Shaman book. So the Aquarian Shaman podcast here, radio show, was birthed from many years of doing this work. But primarily, I really wanted to introduce the world to people that I love, respect, trust, and have learned from personally. And many times have brought these people into my life, into my organization, Venus Rising Association for Transformation, and also who become core staff with us to bring this work into the world and to help awaken and help more and more people remember their Aquarian shaman within. So this is the Aquarian Shaman, and right here, walking the spiral path of transformation inside, lots of different people. Last week I interviewed Sandy Roberts, also known as Wolfwing, and between Sandy and Redhawk and I, we always try to keep some bail money when we go out together. But anyway, here's a picture at the bottom. We got to find it there. There she is. There we are together with the wolf, and it says Venus Rising, and there we are in the book together. So we've done some pretty fun co-creating together, and we're still in that process, aren't we, Redhawk?
Indeed, we are.
More to be created and co-created. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you a little bit to this amazing woman, and I will edit it out a little bit as I go, because when you've been doing something for more than 40 hours, no, I'm sorry, 40 years. Wow.
Probably 40 hours for 40 years.
40 hours a week, but more.
Right.
For 40 years. So here it is. For over 40 years, of course, she started when she was 5. Anyway, I have walked, she says, a path, the crossroads of nature, religion, art, psychology, and shamanic psycho-spiritual studies and practices. I have to put a little aside in there. It was really during that time, as you were making that shift into shamanic psycho-spiritual studies, that term was actually being created, Judy Redhawk. Mm. That wasn't a term anybody else was using. You were there at the beginning of that.
It's true.
My earliest roots, Judy Redhawk says, were formed in the wild teachings of the natural world, creeks, skies, creatures, and in the sacred rhythms of Roman Catholic ritual. And that instilled into her a reverence for mystery and the living presence of spirit. In the woods and the church, she found a sense of peace and quiet from the noisy, chaotic family. Maybe she'll tell us a little bit more about that family. I found inspiration for creating art and dreaming and meaning from my wounds. And I would later read Alice Miller's writings. My greatest gifts came from my greatest wounds. And that's true in the shamanic world, isn't it, Redhawk? That we really are the wounded healers who have found healing. She says here her first languages were of transformation, the power of imagination, stories, embodiment, ritual, which later became a living language. She's trained, and I love this, she has this powerful background in psychology and drama therapy, psychodrama, expressive arts, and all of this brought her psyche. She brought with her to the shamanic psycho-spiritual studies and practices. This became a gateway into the unseen, offering practices of healing, ceremony, and connection. These streams have been woven into a living tapestry, which guides her life and her service to others, illuminates her heart to share with the world. All of these streams that she just spoke about in her bio have led her to Venus Rising for Transformation, where all parts of who I know I am as me had come together, she says. That really touches me, Hawk, that with Venus Rising, you were able to weave all those streams of consciousness, which you had explored so many. You were such a and so much exploration already. But you were able to find those parts and bring them together. And today, as core staff and teacher with Venus Rising, you experience yourself as a shamanic psycho-spiritual guide, a walker between the worlds, teaching, mentoring, and counseling, assisting others with their wounding, discovering the art of living in ceremony, and passing on everything, including ancestral wisdom and contemporary life, to all these folks. You've also experienced that utilizing my shamanic Shakti. I love this. Shamanic Shakti art process, which you are the creator of, is a powerful way of helping students and clients to integrate different parts of themselves and find the re-enchantment in their lives. And finally, acknowledging and honoring all those along the way who, as Mr. Rogers would say, have loved me into being. My children, my family, my friends, my teachers, my spirit tribe. I hope you know who you are. How beautiful. It's really touching. And just reading all of that, and I'm hoping that our audience that sees this now or later can feel the gravity of love and dedication, the gravity of your life as a little innocent girl, that there was something all the way even back then watching over you, guiding you, shepherding you, allowing you to go through your own shamanic initiations, but always bringing you back to what's holy and sacred and turning it into healing and ceremony. And how that kind of personal education, in addition to your degrees that you went and you got, to make it legal, all that wisdom, how all of that has made you who you are now. The light, the dark, as we like to say at Venus Rising, no difference. Of course, there's some difference, but seriously, as it says biblically, if you will, all those things work together for good or goodness or God or goddess for those who love. And with that, I'd like to come back to you now because I'm sure you're percolating there. And to just, with all of that you just heard reflected back to you, what stood out to you the most? And if you wanted to share with people more about your journey and how it relates to their journey, what would you say? What stands out the most to you as I was reading, reflecting your life back to you, your long spiral path?
It was quite interesting listening to it being reflected back, because I thought back to that little girl in the woods, and I thought back to, my very chaotic, crazy family, and that it's hard to put into words. It was all there. The meaning of it was not there yet. So all the pieces were there, and they had to come into relationship with one another over time. The teachers had to show up. I had to be willing to show up, and the initiations were there. And then came, the meaning, finding the meaning of all of it. And then how really and truly how my excitement for that. I know I sometimes say to people, I'm really weird because I really get excited by the emotional work. It's like, it makes sense to me. And it's like, aren't you excited by this? To see how it would play out, because, I thought it was going to be in theater. I thought it was going to be in psychology, and then finding the shamanic breathwork process and ceremony brought all of my interests together. It brought the theater together. It brought art. It brought ritual. It brought healing. And so it was like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. This is a way of helping folks bring the pieces of themselves come together, if that makes sense, in this process.
Absolutely, because that's what we talk about in shamanism, is lost soul parts
Right. Right.
and attachments, taking on things that aren't ours.
Right.
So, especially little children, babies and children, and even animals will do that, take it on for people. But
True.
we're so open and, there isn't such an innocence and we're like little sponges. We're meant to be because we're learning what to be human. And we're
Hmm.
learning that from the influences around us, whatever it might be, people, places, and things. And we're like little sponges taking that all in. But when we take that all in, there's also, I don't think we come in as a blank slate. I think that we have karma and that we have, in some ways predestined opportunities like a plant. It has, it's going to be a rose if it gets the right nourishment, right? But if it's
Hmm.
in the shade too much or something, or if it's in the sun too much, until it's put in the right place with the right conditions, it's not going to fully come into its being. And sometimes
Right.
there's some weeds and things that have to be weeded out. So, you know, there is that potential that's there, that seed
Hmm.
of consciousness within us. But unless we have sometimes some support, you know, from
Hmm.
the magical world, from higher power, but also from live people, you
Right.
know. And so, you've spoken about some of the different modalities that you've been to, and I know you've had many teachers, but um, what did you find specifically, shamanic breath work? What else did you find specifically called to you? And how do you use it in your work today? If you're working with someone, how
Hmm.
would you guide them in a way that you relate to
Hmm.
as healing for yourself and others?
Yeah. When I think of, the work that I do with folks individually, first is we always start with the ritual of, setting the intention of dropping into their hearts, softening the edges of their heart. So to me, softening the edges of our hearts is allowing in imagination, allowing in possibility, allowing in a new story. I always invite folks to be connected to the oversoul of the universe.
Hmm.
I believe that our guides and helpers are always there. And so the smoke of the smudge is like a smoke signal
Oh,
telling
I
the
love
guides and
that. I
helpers,
love that.
yeah, like here we are, come on and join us. And then, Starwolf, what I find is that most of the folks I work with are not familiar with the shamanic psycho-spiritual world. So it's this opportunity to um, help them open up to a different way of understanding the world. And so I find that in reflecting on it, that the world of psychology that I came from was very judgmental.
Hmm.
And it had, a different language. So what I love about our shamanic psycho-spiritual work is, especially when you connect it up to the Egyptian mysteries, it's not judgmental,
Hmm.
and it's a different way of kind of like easing folks into um like behind their own defenses, like so that um their mind and their heart don't shut down and get defensive, that.
I really like that. I really
Mhm.
just one of the things you said before I
Yeah.
forget is, um, in the psychological world, and sometimes I'm even still guilty and shorthanded thinking in my mind about, somebody may have a diagnosis, okay?
Right.
But really, um, so the diagnosis, a word, if you said schizophrenic or bipolar or borderline or whatever, can bring up for people who work in the psychological world. I know it does for me too, of maybe attributes or personality qualities that person has, or difficulties or behaviors. But even if that does pop up, I quickly try to remove that
Hmm.
because I understand that some of that's biochemical, but
Hmm.
sometimes that biochemistry is happening because the trauma is unhealed and the cortisol is running and the chemicals are still running to create those kinds of erratic behaviors or hysteria or depression or those kinds of things. So there's incomplete processes in people's brains trauma
Right.
that's never been healed at the deepest levels because it has been medicated. And I don't want to be a person that's a Nazi and says, I don't believe in any medication. I do. I took a Tylenol yesterday, you know. At the same time, I feel like that in the old paradigm, what we're coming out of, medicine, was different from the medicine that we're using.
Right.
And right. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, about how we're not against, when people have
Mhm.
had a psychotic break, well, hospitalization, all those kinds of things, we interface that, we're not against it. But we believe there's a bigger story and there's more, like what you said. If you could speak about that. What would you do with someone who's come in and they've had a lot of stuff and going on of depression or grief or unhealed anxiety? How would you treat that differently?
Well,
Even if you
I
immediately
yeah.
kind of thought, oh, then it's an anxiety disorder. How would you treat it differently?
Well, I think that the language of the shamanic psychospiritual world is what I've become more sensitive to.
Hmm.
So, um, because language is so powerful, like the difference between the word and but, someone,
Mm,
I love you, but it's like, oh, please don't tell me that. You could say you love me and da 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 da. Please don't say but because that negates everything that came before it in that instance. So
mm,
the power of language, the power of creating a what we call a safe container so that we can, because I love Mr. Rogers, be loved into being. And that even though I forget who it was who said, when love is not enough, because sometimes love isn't enough in the sense that more skill is needed. So we can't just, there's like wish someone into being better. We can facilitate. And so there's that aspect of, what is it that can facilitate a healing process? Okay. And sometimes, yes, sometimes a medicine is needed, okay, because of the biology of the person or and sometimes I'm trying to think of the word. So it's not that it's not that medicine is bad, but there's an interface. And
mm,
how does that help the individual, how their nervous system be able to be regulated? How does it
mm.
help their thoughts to be regulated? And I spend a lot of time educating folks like around, well, what does an addiction mean for them, or what
Yes.
does anxiety mean? So all of these things have meaning. So depression is about loss, anxiety is about fear. And is there something else that's causing that?
Mhm.
If that I
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I hear that, I hear you saying that you're absolutely going to use your professionalism as um, a psychologist. I started to say traditional. We've never been truly a traditional psychologist, but you know what I'm saying. You're grounded in that way. And as a shorthand thought, to rule out things and make sure that somebody's not going to have a break or harm themselves or those kinds of things. But I'm guessing that as quickly as you can, to begin to help stabilize that person so that they can receive the true medicine that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a place where sometimes professionals are afraid to get too personal. And, is it okay for your clients to know that you care about them? That, not in a kind of aloof sort of way, but as you build a relationship, that you authentically love them, that you see them, that you're holding their light and their shadow, and that you're not the boss of them. And, what I mean, what's the I thou relationship that you have with your clients and students?
Mm. That they teach me about themselves.
Mm. They know more than you do about it, right? About themselves,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they just need that brought forth with someone who will accept who they are.
Right. Right. I want to know about, just like you read my bio that I wrote, I want to know, what's your bio? How do you describe yourself? What's your story? What have you been through? So that curiosity and imagination, I think, is really encouraged in our work in a way that's different from maybe it's a more heartfelt
Mm,
imagination and curiosity, I feel, that we bring to our work. Like, we're not looking for what is the box that the person put is that can be put into. It's like, oh, how can we help this person get out of the box? And that requires imagination, and it requires curiosity, and it requires a lot of empathy and compassion, as well as um, some good clinical skills too,
mm,
like how can I keep this person safe? What are the boundaries? You know, what are the goals? How can I facilitate? What is the trust? Building the trust,
mm,
um, building the safety, like all of those foundations that all the psychologists talk about,
right.
like all the developmental stages. And then um, ultimately growing ourselves up,
Mhm,
helping folks grow themselves up too. Like the most, I think the most beautiful image is someone once had this image that uh, when she got nervous, she would imagine that she was sitting in a big rocking chair
mm,
and she was holding her little self in on her lap in that big rocking chair. So in other words, that it's okay to learn to give ourselves what we didn't get and stop feeling like a victim or blaming other people, like, oh,
mm,
I didn't get this, I didn't get that. And it's like, okay, yeah, and what do you want to do about that, you know
right. I
so
think that's beautiful because in the telling of the story, we can begin to rewrite our story from
right,
that adult place. I think, in order to rewrite that story from an adult place, where we can see everything that happened that was painful, was this shaman's wound, you
right,
know, and see that it actually became, if we let it, if we take responsibility for our own healing and transformation with a beautiful guide who's not going to fix us, but allowing us to grow up into the light of our own being, moving the weeds away around. Maybe that person like yourself will help move a little bit, do a little weeding, a little pouring on some water, doing whatever to support that person's growth, but knowing that it's up to them instead of you fixing them. There's nothing to fix. They're not broken,
right,
right? We don't, I mean, we can be broken open, we can be
hmm
wounded, but we're
right,
not broken. The we might feel like our hearts are breaking, things like that, but it is that wounding. What I've learned, and as I've also worked in the world of mental health and addictions and things,
hmm
and is that the very wounds that those people and us have acquired, truly, if we do the inner work to heal it and have the help and support, which I've had and you've had, becomes the greatest medicine. As somebody said
uh-huh.
recently that, oh, there's too much empathy in the world. And I went, oh, no, no, no. There's not enough. What the world needs now is love, sweet love, if anything. And I'm not talking about wimpy stuff.
Right. Well, and there's also the concept too that we talk a lot about is that the understanding the initiations, so that yeah, shitty things happen and horrible things happen. And without being like light polarized around it, it's like at some point, what was the opening? What was the, the initiation? Um, and, I think, and like helping folks understand their own inner voice and their own inner child. So it's like all of those pieces come together, and the beauty, when I first experienced shamanic breathwork, what I felt is that sometimes in a shamanic breathwork session, that the healing can be so immediate. It's like 5 years of talk therapy just
True.
happen in a shamanic breathwork session because it's so embodied.
Yeah.
We use the music that activates at the cellular level, like where memory is stuck or where feeling is stuck. And then there's that embodied expressiveness and that holding space. And so that's the other thing that I really like about the shamanic breathwork ceremony and process is the deep healing that can happen in that container.
Boy, I'm so glad you spoke into that. I'm sitting here thinking about it. The first time I ever did like real breath work where you breathe and do art, and that's it's
Mhm.
me until you breathe, do the art, and have somebody reflect it back to you in a group. It's not breath work,
Right, right,
breathing it alone. It's the whole enchilada. It's like giving people plant medicine and saying bye afterwards.
right,
It's not
right.
integrating. But my greatest wound, and I know you know this about me because we've shared a lot about our lives with one another, is when my grandmother passed when I was 12.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of reasons why that didn't get processed for me as a child, but she was my anchor. And because of that, at 12, I was a sweet, innocent little girl. At 13, I was a hell raising sweetheart, as they called me in
Mhm.
Mansfield, Kentucky. I started a club called the Hellraiser Sweethearts. So anyway, was a very huge thing, difference. And
Mhm.
I needed that wound to go on the journey I went on, but it did not heal until all those years later in my 30s when I breathed the very first time in my early 30s. I went back to that experience and I relived it. I didn't expect to go there. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what this thing was. It was different. I'm an adventurer, but I did it. And when I came out of it, I truly had healed that wound. It
Right.
didn't mean that I still didn't miss my grandmother or anything else, but I grew up inside myself. And the part of me that was here now could really see that little girl and how she really didn't get addressed around it. Nobody knew how to handle it. Everybody was in denial about it because my grandmother was the focus of the family, and how I
Mm.
was the only child and alone. So it was in that breathwork experience, the right people who held me, that I cried, my art that I did. And then, even then, it wasn't nearly as great as what we do. I have to be honest with you, Judy. It just was. It was just kind of like you had about 10 minutes. But anyway, and you only had about 5 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes to process. But just that had
Mhm.
been worth all the therapy sessions prior to that in my life. And it
Yeah,
changed
it's true.
forever.
Yeah.
Forever. It changed my DNA.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because I can remember an experience I had in a breathwork where I had made a spirit doll. And I remember I brought it into the breathwork, and I remember like that I got so angry that I just wailed the shit out of that spirit doll, just and she was like, I had made her with fairy wings and she had messages on her body, and her clothes were kind of dirty, which is kind of how I felt as that little kid. Um, in that breath work though, what I realized is that um I didn't have words for the episode with my mother that led to my how I got to be a healer, because I'd been playing and she got so angry with me about something incidental that um she beat me so badly that she thought she had killed me. I don't know. I might have dissociated and fainted. Who knows? I don't have a specific memory, but what I realized in the breath work is, oh, that's why what I do as a therapist, as shamanic psychospiritual psychotherapist, is I create the safe space so
Mm-hmm.
that no one is, it's like I'm the guardian of the space so that you can be as expressive as you want, and no one is going to come and beat the shit out of you when you're not paying attention, when you're just involved with yourself. And because that's really what happened. Like I was just playing, and all of a sudden, not knowing what happened, all of a sudden I get wailed on, and it was like very shocking, and
Mm,
then it became my mission, I believe, to create that safe space. And for me, it's a play space, and it's an emotional space. It's an imaginative space, and it's so many things. But that notion of safety is really, really important. So then I became like the guardian at the gate. I'm
yeah.
going to
Well, that
like,
really says that, to me, that you're going back there and you're walking with that person. You're not, holding space, but you're going as far as you can with them to the edge of that with them and
hmm
being kind of that, a spirit guide in that way with them, so that they can find their helpers or find the things that have been holding them together and whatever else wants to come in, and maybe some things that need to leave, need to be
hmm
vomited up, need to be cried out, need to be beat out, that needed to be,
right,
chanted out, whatever people need, that whatever needs to be given permission physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as a, Aquarian shaman, which you are,
Mhm.
you're there as long as it doesn't hurt you or anyone else,
Right,
meaning the person or you or anything, anybody in the outer world.
yeah,
It's okay to, um, what do you want to say, as an, to like beat the energies and the pillow and everything, and I hate you, mama or daddy or whatever, you know,
hmm
and it's not going to hurt those people.
right,
That you're doing this in a safe container. It stays there in that energy. You release it back to the earth. There's no ill intent or black magic going out to anybody. It's not
right.
that. It's a little child, usually, or an adolescent completing, or maybe a past life,
hmm
completing unfinished business.
Right. And there's a quality of tenderness that I think that we get to bring to the process too, like that reverence, the sacredness, the tenderness,
Mm.
when we get in touch with our own inner child and what they maybe needed that they didn't get, that there's that, yeah, just that quality of, like I said, of the tenderness and the sacredness. Um,
When the blocks are removed, it's kind of like, the creek down below. We took some of the weeds out, moved some rocks around, and then the creek could just naturally flow.
right.
It's not like you're, um, making it happen or uh, creating something that wasn't there. It's just dammed up emotions and feelings that then frequently turn on people and cause them to have, mental illnesses, immunity disorders,
Mm-hmm.
addictions. What happened in my own life was more addictions kinds of
Right.
stuff and immunity stuff too, immune system stuff. But with the release of, you know, what was no longer serving me, because I do believe those things serve us.
Mm-hmm.
They were the classrooms for
It's
helping
true.
that. But after we know about it and that sort of thing, and after we've made it conscious, there's no need to carry it around anymore.
Right.
Because if you want to carry it around, you can put it in your medicine bag, put it in around your heart, and know that you have, taken the poison and you have turned it into medicine.
Right.
And, a little bit of medicine, and now that medicine can be shared with others. And, that's one of the things you really do so well, Red Hawk, is your vulnerability, your I thou relationship. It's why I send all my family members to you. I had to laugh just in the last couple of days. A couple of people, who are close friends and who are also therapist women like us, are all referring their children to you. They're grown children, adult children. And it's, everybody needs someone to talk to sometimes and to just really be held. And unfortunately, sometimes, or fortunately, I don't know, but it can't frequently, it's not the parents that can help, you know. So
True.
but it is true that we all have to find a way to grow ourselves up so that we can, and one of our initiations that we teach in Venus Rising is that everybody's got a soul's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that you just described and talked about, the journey of our being born, our childhood, our adolescence, what we go through, the credentials, the degrees, the heartbreak, all of that is part of the wounding, and it's also part of the teaching. And at some point, if we're really ongoing and doing the work, it truly becomes our sacred medicine chest. And it is the greatest thing that we have to share with others.
It's funny, as you were talking, I was just thinking about, because, I love art processes so much. And so I was just thinking, so I just had this memory flashed up when you said medicine chest. I was thinking about the little girl of me who was always going around in my house, like painting furniture and, and making things. And it's like, I really, the qualities that I have now, I had back then. So I
Yes,
was
you did.
always being the oldest of five and bossing around and like when our dog got hit by a car, I looked at my mother and I said, well, you're probably happy now because you didn't like that dog anyway, because my dad had brought the dog and she didn't like the dog. So there was that quality of the creativity, in a way that like leadership quality, the protectiveness,
Mm-hmm.
um, and one of my fondest memories is, when I came to you when we still had our retreat house, and I said, hey, can I paint the bathrooms? Can I,
I don't remember you asking if you could paint them. I just remember coming in and you painting them.
Well, your motto was, if you can think of it, you can own it.
That's true. We needed a lot of help getting that place painted, so I was glad to see you doing it. But it was funny. I was like,
Right.
oh, she's painting my bathroom. Okay.
Right. So it's like, oh, so like that little girl self that was like painting the furniture and doing all that stuff when she was little. Finally, in Venus Rising, I finally had a place where I could
Yeah.
bring all those expressive parts of myself, like, oh, okay, I can paint this. I can change this, I can make an impact, and so there's the impact on the physical environment
Yes.
and the impact on that, mind, body, spirit,
Mhm.
emotional environment. And I think that I've had to learn to appreciate through this whole process, because I'm a helper and a student always at the same time. So to
Right.
really, really understand um that magic or that impact that my gifts can have on people. And so
Yeah.
there's a place here where that can happen too.
So, in your world, in your consciousness, how important is it for the people you work with to own their wounding, to
Mm.
express it, to fully go into it, and to know that through different times in their lives it might pop up again, and that's okay because it might get opened up again in some way. But how important is it to not keep people sick and as victims and
Yeah.
patients, and to encourage them to unwrap their gifts from the very wounds that
Yeah.
felt so horrible, not to gloss over it, not to be in spiritual bypass, to go fully into it. We do that, but get it out, let it out, and know it may come up again on this spiral path. But how important is it for people to stop over identifying with the wounded self and to move into maybe not only their creativity, but their sacred purpose?
Well, Star that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Really and truly, that's what's important, is that all of the tools, all of the methodologies, all of the teachings create this, that spiral path. And it's like Dorothy, okay, and her yellow brick road, it's like, yeah, there's the spiral path. There's a way to do this. And what I love about that spiral path is once we start on that, it's like, at any point on the spiral path, I can look across at where I've come,
Mm,
and say, oh, okay, I've spiraled. I'm different. I can look across and I can see where I've come. And so it's we don't ever want to keep folks captive,
Mm,
to it's like our process is about growth and change.
yeah,
And also, it brings up the whole codependency and recovery piece. Like, we don't ever want to be codependent with, it's like if we get caught in in helping folks to stay the same, then
mm.
we're not doing our sacred purpose.
That is so
And
true.
yeah,
That just I could just jump in real quick and just
yeah,
say,
please.
when I don't work with one-on-one anymore, but I did for many years, and I was working with someone on the phone that I actually cared a lot about, and but I had and they'd signed up for like 6 sessions, once a week or whatever, and I was doing that over the phone this some years ago, and I'd listened all 6 sessions to almost the same thing, and
Hmm.
gently encouraging, and then not so gently, and then a little stronger and everything. And at that last one, and she said she wanted to sign up for another 6. And I said, I'm not willing to do that
Hmm.
unless you're willing to change.
Right.
And it seems to me that you may be comfortable with where you are, and you're seeking more comfort than change. And
Right.
I'm not criticizing you. And I actually have therapists I know of that I will refer you to who will help you stay the same. If
Hmm.
you just want to voice this each week, and they will very patiently and lovingly hold the space for you to continue to tell this story. But that's not who I am. I'm a
Hmm.
person who pushes people's butts through the birth canal,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it doesn't fit for me. And I love you, but I honestly can't hold that space for you because it's not my nature. My nature is to change and transform. Well, of course,
And
she
I
was
think,
very irritated,
sure.
frustrated, and all of that. And she said, and after we hung up, she called me or emailed me or something. I don't remember. It's a long time ago. She came
Hmm.
back. Do you know that she came back? She said, okay, I'm signing up for 6 more. Darn it, but I'll change. And I'm like, don't change for me. I don't need for you to change.
Right.
I love you just the way you are. But that's not who I work with. I work for people who want to change. And
Right.
she made some humongous changes after that. And I felt really badly about it at some level, but I just knew I couldn't do it, and I knew it wasn't right for her or me.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage as a counselor to do that sometimes, doesn't it? To not be codependent.
Yeah. And sometimes I always go back to, sometimes the most loving word in the English language is the word no.
Yeah.
And I think about our code of ethics, that we use as like the guiding principles, around um focusing on the individual, being aware of where the traps are, because
Mm-hmm.
to work with folks, there's a huge there's an impact on us too. And
Right.
that's why it's easy to get caught,
Yeah.
especially if we're tired, or, we're wounded or going through something ourselves. So there's that we are accountable to ourselves, we're accountable to our clients, we're accountable to one another. And so, there's this beauty in this process because it is so very intimate, where we can say to one another, hey, uh, do you think maybe something's happening for you that is impacting this process? Like, we have that kind of like openness, and it's okay to say, no, I think you're wrong. Like, I will say, I'll figure it out myself and I'll get back to you about it. Um, Um, so there is that ethic. So I think that's really important when it comes to the shamanic work, the shamanic psychospiritual work with shamanic breath work ceremony that we're bringing to the world, that we don't want to be in spiritual bypass. We don't want to be caught in spiritual narcissism. We don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be caught in communal narcissism. That we refer back to what our guiding principles are, what our ethics are, you know, so that um, we're not doing any harm.
I love that. You know, to be of service and to do no harm. And
Right.
as a teacher and a counselor, as a shamanic practitioner, to stay accountable to others. You know, I have about four people that, you know, you being one of those, that I reflect, you know, to that I trust will tell me the truth
Mhm.
from their perspective. You know, I might resist it, I might argue some, I might, you know, I might not like it or whatever. But the reality is, I wouldn't even allow that feedback into my life if I didn't want to hear it,
Right.
truthfully, regardless of whatever my little ego might want. You know, the part of me that is the shamanic um, consciousness person and the Aquarian shaman, I too want to continue to grow. I too want to
Mhm.
know more about my own shadow. I want to know more about my own light and my sacred purpose. And is this still my, whatever I'm doing, is this still my sacred purpose? It's important every now and then to do that,
Mhm.
whoever you are, to say, this is what I've been doing. Is this still relevant? Is this still where I need to be? If not, I might need to get off that circle or that linear and move on to the spiral path of birth,
Right.
death, rebirth. And that takes a lot of courage, because whenever we do that, we know we're going to change radically. We're
Mhm.
literally, you know, or figuratively going to undergo a ego death.
Right.
That's always a good time to not do it alone. So
Right.
people don't have to be lost in an addiction or family of origin stuff or major shadow. People can just work, go to a shaman such as yourself, an Aquarian shaman, and say, I just like, I need to change, or there's something that's going on I'm not aware of, or I'm feeling a little stuck, or, you know, I find more and more that's the kind of folks that I'm working with more. I used to be on the front
Right.
lines more. I think you did too. More and more, it's people that have done a lot of work and are wanting to go further. What do you feel
Right.
about that spiral path? We've got a few minutes left on that.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you, Star Wolf, because there's so as you're talking, what comes up for me is that folks are really, really hungry to have the experience of another way of being in the world. And I think you know, we it's like we all want to know that our lives mean something, and that there's a place for whatever our gifts are, you know. So absolutely, like a lot more of the folks that are coming now are really searching for something that they can experience that will take them deeper into themselves and help them create meaning, and that they in turn want to share that with others.
Hmm.
Why we have our ship and our skills and our master apprenticeship program and our university,
Mm.
uh, all in one, to help folks who want to find their sacred purpose that way. There's an avenue for that. There's a way for that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's beautiful what you just said. And that is with Venus Rising Association for Transformation. Part of our goal is to um, kind of do what we can to help people complete the unfinished business of their past lives, their
Yeah.
childhood, their birth processes, any addictions or whatever, knowing that
Mhm.
it is a spiral path to the last breath and then beyond, but to clear out as much of the wreckage of the past as we can,
Right.
and
Right.
then to then get a life. And probably those who, a big, good portion of the people that show up here with us are also called to be planetary servers themselves, which we
Right.
say
Right.
shamans or shamanic ministers or shamanic breathwork practitioners or whatever.
Mhm.
And then we
Or
can
just
guide them.
even better spouses, just even
Yeah, better better
friends and
human
family
beings.
members.
But then we can, you know, as people are moving through the healing, then we can support them on their shamanic path, wherever it's going to take them,
Right.
and be ongoing there as a lineage carrier, a teacher, a support, for folks to go deeper and further. And you and I both have this, where people that we've known for years and years, and never so often something will come up, and then they reach back out to us, and just knowing that's there. And, I know what that's meant to me over the years. I mean, Jackie Small is 90 years old. She just had her 90th birthday. We're supposed to talk. We've been trying to get together. Tenny, who runs Shades of Hope, still does in her late 80s, 88, I think, still running it in Shades of Hope Treatment Center in Buffalo Gap, Texas. We're supposed to talk in a couple of days. These are the women I'm saying, you're the badass shamans of the world. Okay. You're the ones that I'm watching because you're my next story.
Right. True.
And so I feel that we're doing that, hopefully, Hawk, is that we're, and it's not just women, we have men and,
Absolutely.
so other genders. So, and ages and everything. That's the other thing. We're not cookie cutter. We love each other, but we're different. And so we're not all walking around in white robes, and that sort of thing. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying, we're very Aquarian that we have so many gifts. People have so many gifts to bring to the world, but we really have to do the work of the wounded healer for ourselves first, or we can actually wound and harm people unintentionally.
Right.
So I really want to acknowledge you here in the last couple of minutes. I want to acknowledge the long and winding spiral road that you've been on. I'm so grateful that you came into my life, and that I don't even know how long we've known each other, but we met out in California, didn't we?
No, we met actually in 2003 out of shamanic breathwork after my brother had killed himself, because
Oh my gosh.
that's how I got into introduced to shamanic breathwork was through death, the death of my mother.
Wow.
6 months later, the death of my brother. 6 months after that, the death of a suicide of a friend. So, which is when I started my shamanic breathwork training in 2004. So,
Wow.
yeah.
We've got 1 minute left, so
Okay.
we'll come out of that death. But I'm just saying that
Here we are.
out of death comes rebirth.
Right.
After death comes birth.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that our paths have interwoven and spun around all these years, different permutations. And thank you for being on this show today.
Thank you.
And it's I love you as a sister, as a friend, as a colleague, so grateful that you're a part of Venus Rising and the new program that's being created, Transformation House. So anybody would like to come. First of all, if you want to work with Judy Redhawk, what's your email real quick?
Judy Redhawk at shamanicbreathwork.org.
Okay. And you can also go to shamanicbreathwork.org website, and you can read and find Judy there as well.
Right.
And yeah, so thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I look forward to continuing on with our co-creations together and kicking off the next iteration of Transformation House coming up soon. So Transformation House, if you're interested in that, that's a more extended program of coming out for a week or so and spending some time primarily with Judy Redhawk, but also some other folks, and taking some time to go to another level of healing and focus just on yourself. And of course, Venus Rising always has trainings and teachings happening all around the world. Where I think last I heard 33 countries, Judy,
Wow.
spreading. So
Wow.
that's exciting.
It
Anyway,
is.
I love you and
Love
thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Star Wolf.
Keep breathing. This is Star Wolf, and you've been listening to the Experiential Aquarian Shaman broadcast. Transform yourself, transform the world. Join me every second and fourth Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio to awaken your inner Aquarian shaman. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to my channel and connect with me on social media at Linda Star Wolf. For more information about my offerings and trainings, visit shamanicbreathwork.org. Thank you for taking this special time to journey with me.